Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today I have a very large codon and we are making a tier list. And that's it. That's the whole intro. And for this particular video, I want to reiterate the criteria, the factors that we are looking at, the main factor for the tier list so that you aren't confused by the placements. I need to make it very clear that this is not a power ranking. It is not the MVPs. It is who is most improved. Which characters have the best, the most noticeable differences between their base C0 and their full constellation. Since I don't want this video to be 30 minutes long, we are going to look at every single character individually. I'm going to separate it into a part 1, which is the 4 stars, and a part 2, which is the 5s. So the 5-star video should be uploaded roughly 24 hours after this one. And like always, I want to thank the viewers on my Twitch channel for helping me compile this tier list, giving me their opinions. It's not just my completely biased opinion. There are other people's voices in here. So if you want your voice to be heard in tier lists similar to this in the future, then check out the stream. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So starting with Amber, her first constellation basically translates to having a 20% attack boost for her charge attacks. Her C2, however, is very good. For the most part, you won't need that full HP. You won't need Baron Bunny to be out for as long as its duration actually is. So being able to detonate it early and get more damage out of it is fantastic. And then C4. The 15-second cooldown being decreased by 20% is good, but adding an additional charge, having 2 Baron Bunnies, extremely useful for a DPS built Amber or even support if you are using Baron Bunny as a distraction. C5, another talent level up, and then C6, Fiery Rain, her burst, increasing your movement speed and attack by 15% for 10 seconds. Basically, her C6, half of it is almost akin to the 4-piece Noblesse set with the attack increase using the burst. Being able to dodge enemies' attacks and avoid being one-shot is crucial, and I think in total, Amber's constellations are really good, especially her 6th. If she was actually on a rate up ever, that would be fantastic, but for now we'll slaughter an A. And next up we've got Kaya, whose constellations are pretty okay. Really, C1 is the only one you need. If you're building a DPS Kaya, a high crit rate Kaya, then this is fantastic. His C2, increasing the duration of Glacial Waltz after proccing it by defeating an enemy, kind of inconsistent. For the rest of the video, we just know that C3 and 5 are talent level up, so let's just skip those. His C4 is good for survivability, but for the most part, you don't want your HP getting anywhere near 20% in the first place. And with Kaya primarily being a DPS character, you really don't want this for a constellation, especially on a non-rate up. You're gonna have healing, you're gonna have decent shields in your team if you're playing the game optimally. So it does feel like a bit of a waste. And then C6, Glacial Waltz having an additional icicle and then regenerating 15 energy. Kaya does need consistent cryo to make the most out of his Constellation 1, as well as the cryo artifact set. But getting 15 energy from using his burst isn't fantastic when you see that his skill, the cooldown for Frostgnaw, is only 6 seconds. So you're really not going to have to worry about not having consistent cryo for the most part. Because of that, I really think C1 is the only really good constellation that Kaya has. The others add a little bit, but you don't need them to do the job that Kaya does. So unfortunately for him, I think he doesn't have enough fantastic constellations to make them worth it. I would put him in C. I am terrified by the amount of times I'm going to say the word constellation in this video. Lisa, probably one of the least used characters in this game, despite everybody kind of loving her. Her constellations are decent. They're definitely oriented towards a DPS build. C1 with the energy recharge. C2 makes her a lot bulkier so she can stay out on the field longer while doing all of her Lisa shit, whatever that is. 3 and 4 making her burst stronger. Then C6 takes away the need to use a lot of uncharged skills to get that conductive status for a very strong charged. I couldn't think of a better way to say that, but you guys know what I'm talking about. These are all decent constellations. I wouldn't say they're enough to make her like a busted DPS character. Like, no characters are bad in this game, but there's still better options other than Lisa. You'd still have to invest a lot of time and resources into her artifact building, even if you get her full cons. But that being said, I think B is fair. Moving on to Barbara, who, if you played at launch, everybody literally should have at least a Constellation 1 Barbara. And I don't think I've met a single person who has her under like 4. C1 more energy recharge is fantastic. It's great. You need her burst. In fact, all of her constellations have to do with her healing. If you want to make the most out of Let the Show Begin, you need to start building Barbara a little bit in attack. And this definitely helps her overall damage output. And this one for energy recharge C4 is huge, especially if you do end up getting somewhat decent damage output on Barbara. And then C6 I think probably puts her in S tier. Being able to revive a character in the abyss is just amazing. This thing is huge, it's amazing. Combined with everything else, I think her constellations are great. They all work towards what she is as a character, which is support, which is healing. An exponentially better Barbara at C6 as opposed to C0. So I think she is definitely our first S. Now Razor is definitely an interesting one. What I really like about his cons cons is that they are all oriented to maximize his DPS. Elemental orbs and particles, super easy to obtain with Razor, especially with Electro Resonance. His C2 I don't think is fantastic. If you have a character underneath 30 HP with a DPS unit like Razor, odds are you really don't need that extra crit anyway. C4 of course very good for white damage if you're running a superconduct team, even better. And C6 being able to not only increase the total damage output of your skill, but also just applying more consistent electro damage, very, very good. I'd still say that C0, that base Razor, is still an amazing DPS unit, probably the best 4-star. So do you need his cons? No. Does it still improve him? Maybe not drastically, but definitely yes. So that's probably going to be the one thing to keep him out of S, but A tier more than deserved. Again though, C6 Razor as a character overall is broken, is fantastic, is one of the best DPS units in the game. But this isn't about who's generally the best, once again. This is about the difference between C0 and C6, so just please keep that in mind before you hate me. Chiang Ling, definitely a character who gets a marked improvement from her constellation. C1 increases pyro damage when enemies are hit with Goba, even better if you have pyro resonance, if you have another DPS pyro user like Diluc, like Klee, even Bennett. If Chiang Ling is your DPS, then C2 is also very good, adding more consistent pyro to her kit. Then 3 and 4. So Pyronado, in my opinion, probably one of the best bursts in the game. It does a shit ton of damage, it lasts for a very long time, and increasing its duration by 40% is nuts. Then C6, not only is Pyronado quicker, but just like C1, the rest of your pyro attacks are stronger. So again, with a double pyro team, with a pyro DPS outside of Chiang Ling, this is going to be very, very good. I think a lot of people at this point are converting Chiang Ling from DPS into just pure elemental reaction with a lot of energy recharge, which is probably the way to go, especially with constellations like this. With all of her dupes, she goes from a decent Crescent Pike DPS polearm user to a busted pyromaniac. So I think A tier top of A is more than fair. Beidou, on the other hand, is a little bit disappointing, a little underwhelming when you get to her full constellation, which I actually have. Getting a shielded C1 by using her burst is decent, but odds are you already have another shield user or you have good healing support to where you don't need this too much. C2 increasing the damage of her burst is decent as long as you have her built for maximum electro damage. C4, if that 20% was a 50 or above, then this would be really good, but the whole point of Beidou's E is so that you don't have to take damage, so you can eat hits. So having to proc this by getting hit with an attack by taking damage is kind of dumb in my opinion, and not really worth the 20% additional electro damage. Then C6, this is good if you have Fischl in your team, maybe even Razor, but I've tried putting multiple different builds on my Beidou. I've tried to max out her electro damage, and this really doesn't do much. In every single artifact set that I put on her, I can tell that she is meant for good bulk, good support, but maybe not DPS, and a lot of these constellations are DPS based, and they don't add enough to make them worth it. Don't get me wrong, I really like Beidou, she's a great unit, and I like her design, she's fucking hot, but summoning to get her full constellations, in my opinion, I did not notice a significant difference between base Beidou and full C Beidou. She's still a very good unit overall, but do her constellations add a new dimension to her character? Not really. Just small buffs here and there aside from her C1, so I am going to have to throw her in C. Shin Q, on the other hand, benefits greatly, exponentially from his constellations. The Water Boy is all about hydro damage, and C1 helps him both with support with his E and with his burst. C2 adds more hydro damage, which is good for his burst, for his E, and any other hydro users. C4 makes his skill even stronger than it already is, and by the way, his skill is busted. If you have the new Dragonspine sword on him, especially Sacrificial Sword, this is going to be really, really good. Then C6 not only makes Raincutter better, but also makes it spammable. Every single one of these has their uses, there's not a single bad con here, and his overall damage output, his potential as elemental support, as DPS, is improved exponentially with all these constellations, especially the 6th. Technically, it doesn't add any brand new elements, he's still used in the same way with or without his constellations, but similar to Razor, it just builds upon what he's already very good at, so I think a high A tier is the best spot for him. Now, my special lady, the love of my life, Ninguang, who also has very, very solid cons. AoE damage on all of her hits is super huge, then Jade Screen being able to be spammable. Her skill has no right to do as much damage on summon on activation as it does, so being able to use it twice in a row with Star Shatter in the middle is fantastic. She adds decent bulk for her C4, then C6 makes the charge attack after using her burst even stronger. Aside from C4, this is definitely a DPS oriented constellation tree, and I think they all work really well together. Base Ninguang is still relatively decent, but C1, C2, and C6 are crucial to make her a busted DPS. So I think that middle of A tier is a good spot. And now we can finally get into one of the characters on the current rate up ban banner, Fischl, who without even saying, I'm pretty sure you guys already know she's going in S. Every single one of these just enhances her electro damage, in particular Oz's damage output. C4 if she's your DPS, if she is out fighting longer than your other characters, it's going to be very important for that HP regeneration. Then C6 adding electro damage to every single attack on all of your characters. And if you have a consistent hydro damage dealer like Q, like Child, like Mona, basically every single hydro user, that electro charge is going to destroy enemies. Like Ninguang, base Fischl is still very, very good, but with that full constellation, with that C6, in my opinion, easily the best 4-star character in the game with those cons. Top of S for sure. Takes her from decent elemental damage, elemental support, to anything you want her to be, DPS, broken support DPS, whatever. And now the second rate up on the current banner, Bennett. So Bennett is a really weird one. Basically, 1 and 2, these constellations right here are all you need. 5 is good, 3 and 4 both make Passion Overload stronger, so to pack more power in his punch as a busted support unit, these are good, and you can even start building him for DPS if you wanted to. But C6 is what takes him from S tier all the way down to probably B or C. You guys have seen videos warning you not to get a full constellation Bennett. The reason is the effect that it adds to Fantastic Voyage, which is probably the best burst in the game, especially for support. It completely nullifies the damage output of a lot of DPS characters. The pyro damage infusion to your attacks takes away physical damage. So if you have Razor, who's good for white damage, who most likely has a physical damage bonus goblet, his attacks, these pyro infused attacks, aren't going to do a lot. You need to make sure that your DPS units are built for purely base attack and not fizz damage. Otherwise, they're going to do less even with this pyro damage increase. If you are running a reaction like Melt or Vaporize, then it might be useful, but for the most part, for half of the DPS characters, C6 ends up being a hindrance more than anything else. It has the potential to completely destroy the usefulness of Fantastic Voyage. I'm almost tempted to put him in D just because of that, but the rest of his cons are still really, really good, especially 1 and 2, of course. And if your DPS is elemental damage like Mona, like Klee, a catalyst user, then it's not going to make a difference. C6 really does suck. It's terrible. It's god awful for the most part. He would be an S otherwise with those first 5. He has to sit in B for now. I just went outside. It's pouring. I'm freezing, but let's move on to Noelle, who probably has the best constellation tree in the entire game. C1 guarantees healing when you use her burst and skill at the same time. By the way, having an E that heals and puts up a shield at the same time is busted enough as it is. C2 solidifies her spin to win factor. C4 adding damage output to her shield, especially if you have something like Sacrificial Greatsword on her, really, really good. And then C6 turns her into the most well-rounded character in the game, without a doubt the best C6. She gives your team tankiness, she heals, and now she is DPS. I didn't think at the start of this video that I'd put anyone above Fischl, but Noelle definitely deserves it. Chiang Ling, on the other hand, honestly kind of underwhelming with this full constellations. 1 and 2 are very good for support, adding even more consistent cryo with 1 and decreasing cooldown of all your character's skills at 2, but the other ones for the support role that Chiang Ling typically fills aren't very good. C4, because he's generally not DPS, isn't very useful because you don't want to spend time hitting enemies with him, and for C6, for a final constellation, the effect of it is very specific and doesn't always work. Even when it does, having a 15% damage buff to his burst and then 1 extra hit of his burst isn't amazing. For a final constellation, for summoning so many times that you get a full C Chiang Ling, I feel like it's not really worth it after C1 and C2. You aren't going to notice a significant difference at all, especially with that last one. So because of that, I think either C or D. Nobody has bad constellations, but compared to everybody else, especially with 4 through 6, definitely the worst out of every 4-star character, so I think D tier is the only spot for him. He's not too much worse than Kaya or Beto, but I do want to have every tier on the list filled with at least 1 character. So I'm sorry, Chiang Ling. I'm sorry, Chiang Ling fans. I am a Chiang Ling fan. I like him. I use him. Sucrose, I think a lot of people realized very early on, is probably the best elemental support character, the best damage support character. And her constellations just add to that, even starting with 1 swirl damage is going to be nuts. C2 buffing her burst as well. C6 adding even more to what her passive talents already do. There's a reason Sucrose is in every single team of those videos you see of people one-shotting bosses. This is basically just a buff to the Veridicent set. Her dupes just exponentially raise the amount of elemental support that she brings to the table, so I think it's another solid S. Now we're at the 2 newest additions, starting with Diona, who also has a very good constellation tree. C1 basically turns her energy cost down from 80 to 55. C2 buffs her E's damage output and also makes the shield a lot bulkier. C4, honestly, I don't really like. With the scaling on her burst and her E, you really want to put all of her stats into HP, energy recharge, and defense. She gets enough consistent cryo damage as it is, so spamming charge shots with her honestly isn't the best move. And then C6, which is very similar to Bennett's Fantastic Voyage, only it raises your mastery instead of your attack percent, and the buffs to healing are a lot better if your team needs healing. Getting her final constellation along with every other S tier character makes her considerably, massively better than without. It puts her over the edge as a support character specifically, so I think she belongs in S as well. Now we have arrived at Jinyan, the final 4-star, whose constellations, if I had looked into them before, I probably would have pulled for her. So with her C1, basically, if you have a crit build on her, it gives her 12% increased attack speed, which is really good. C2 not only activate her E when she uses her skill, but also basically guarantees a crit. Yo, I need to apologize for whatever the fuck just came out of my mouth. I said activate her E when using her skill. So let's address that and also at the same time just gloss right past it. C4 increases your physical damage output. So on superconduct teams and the like, this is really good. Then her final constellation is basically Noelle's C2 and C6 combined. If you get Jinyan to C6 and you invest most of her stats into defense and crit rate, she's gonna be broken. Based off of her C6 alone, I'm tempted to put her in S tier above Noelle at the very top, but I think Noelle still has the edge because of her healing, and I don't want to betray Fischl after hyping her up so much, so I'll put her in 3rd place for the 4 stars. And that is it. That is the tier list for today. That is all the 4 stars. Again though, for everyone looking at this, I just want to reiterate, this is not how good the characters are. It's not even how good the characters are with their constellations, it is comparing them from C0 to C6. Chongyun is not better or worse than Sucrose overall as a character, as a support character. Kaya is not worse DPS than Fischl, Razor, or Ninguang, but in terms of improvement with their constellations, with their full tree fulfilled, I think this is as accurate as me and my Twitch viewers can come up with. But if you think anyone should be higher or lower on this list, then go ahead and leave it in the comments. As always, I would love to know your opinions. Who should be higher? Who should be lower? Whose constellations do you have? Whose are you going for? I will be putting up the 5-star video the day after this one is uploaded, and we will be making the tier list on stream. So if you are watching this the day it comes out, head over to the stream. Odds are we're making it right now. I would love to get as many different opinions as possible. And aside from that, the stream is really fun, so go ahead and check it out anyway. Twitch.tv/Spinecar. You guys know the drill. Don't forget to give the video a like if you enjoyed the content you saw today. Self-advertisement is not my strong suit. Thank you all so much for watching. My name, of course, has been Spinecar, and I will see you all next time.